I think this is one of, in an earlier Woodward book, there's a heartbreaking passage where he's clearly channeling Colin Powell. Powell, who's a pal of Woodward's, is clearly the source. And before the Iraq War, Powell is thinking to himself, these guys, who are making this decision have never been at war, none of them. Rummy was in the service but wasn't at war, and I'm the one who's been at war, and I'm the one who knows what these kids are going to go through and sacrifice, and they don't know this. But he did not take it, and that's why I think he was really, it's such a sad kind of Faustian tale with Colin Powell, who might have been president, that at that moment he did not take it to the max. It's the central kind of dynamic of the David Hare play. Stuff happens. And he should have just gone into Bush and unloaded and said how he really felt about this, but he didn't. He pulled back. And you see him as a very diminished figure in this new Woodward book when Andy Card actually comes in, and also in a new Karen DeYoung book that says he was fired by Bush. And they rolled over him, used him to go to the UN and make this speech with a lot of junk in it, even though he tried to vet it. A friend of his told me that it was, when he got it from Cheney's office, it was a 2.5-hour speech full of not true stuff. And he and Tennant stayed up all night, and he thought he had gotten all the untrue stuff out, but he hadn't. It was just infected with untrue. So they used Colin Powell, who had the highest popularity rating and the most moral standing, and then they tossed him aside. And there's this really sad quote in the Woodward book where he says to Andy Card, well, if I go, Don should have to go too, meaning Rumsfeld. And it's like, he should have made a stand at that moment, because as he said, he was the one who knew what the cost would be in the blood of our kids. And I do think Bush lacks a certain empathy. I just don't think he hasn't gone to one funeral. He has not gone to one memorial service. And he says, well, if you went to one, he'd have to go to more. But think of how many Rudy Giuliani went to after 9/11. When a whole unit like the one in Ohio was blown up. I just, I don't think they want to see it. It isn't part of their reality.
One more question, maybe? From Dick, right here.
The column next to yours today is written by Robert Harris, who warns us that a major attack could produce the kind of authoritarian takeover that happened in ancient Rome, what they did. From what you know about the character and personality of Bush and about the way they operate, what would be your scenario should there be another attack like that?
Well, I'm not sure how that would go, because on the one hand, it's very discouraging to see what happened with the detainee bill, because it seemed the Democrats are kind of acting like they push Bush back, but he seemed to get everything he wanted out of it. There's not going to be habeas corpus. It's not a great testament to American values. So he is still able, he and Cheney are still able to use national security to get their way. They're having, several victories in the paper today on pushing back checks and balances. But on the other hand, they keep making this remark about how they've saved us from another attack, but to me, that's much more a product of the terrorists operate on their own time. I'm not sure if they care who's president, and when they're ready, they will attack. I don't know how much our attempts to protect the homeland don't seem very, effective to me. So it's hard to say which way that would go. It could go like Katrina, where it could be apparent that they're ineffective. They push themselves as the CEO presidency, and yet they've been completely ineffective. So, but again, I don't know. I think we're in uncharted territory. It's amazing to look back to that kind of halcyon time. That was another thing I was going to say, the woman who asked about Condi. I think the big mistake was Condi and Rummy were very schooled in Cold War, Russian politics, and they were looking at it from the point of terrorism had to be sponsored by a state, and they were just very old-fashioned and not up to date on the fact that terrorism could be this free-floating, you know, parasitic force, and that was another problem. So, and they seem to me still kind of stuck in, we're so reactive, like the liquid gel thing at airports. It's like the terrorists will do something. I mean, you know, growing up, we had Nancy Drew and Bugs Bunny and Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart and American Ingenuity, and we just, you know, the world of tomorrow at Disneyland, and you just felt like we were going to be ahead of everything. Our scientists were the best, and now it just seems so reactive and bumbling, and it's just very discouraging. So I'm not sure, and I hope we don't have to find out soon. Anyway, thank you guys. You were fantastic.